Our keynote is Victor Amoruso, very good friend of mine. I know him since 2003. He was one of the first person we met together with Carlos and other colleagues to start the conference. He's been the linchpin behind this conference. He only missed once. I don't know why he didn't come to Turkey. Probably he was scared of the Syrian war, but that's the only one he missed. He's a well-known academic in his own area. And honestly, I get him as a good friend. He's like an older brother to me. And we just don't come to religious talk. We do also meet on another conference, Circle Conference.
Thank you very much.
And he's a fantastic speaker. So obviously, if you got any questions, we'll take the questions afterward. And then if it's any further discussion, we can take it at the coffee break. And we definitely will break up for the coffee at 3:40. Over to you.
Thank you.
Victor, thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. You are saying that we are like brothers, so thank you, my brother. I don't know if I need the microphone or if you are listening well to me.
You got
it's
this.
Better. I have got to read the microphone. Okay. So, first of all, I want to pay tribute to the conference organizers and to congratulate them, mainly Darius, for this successful conference. And I also want to thank for the invitation to be one of the keynote speakers. So, as you can see, the title of my conference is about pilgrimages, material and immaterial constructions. As you already noticed, since this morning already many people spoke about these subjects, and that it was really my goal. My goal was to speak about what people have been speaking along the years in these conferences. And in fact, we are always touching more or less these three subjects: the pilgrimage and their immaterial constructions and material constructions. The presentation will be based only on images, so only pictures, no text. I will speak a little bit about each image. As you can see here on the top, you have always stressed if I'm speaking about pilgrimage, about immaterial elements or about material elements. And in fact, sometimes it's very difficult to separate, for instance, pilgrimage, in this case, from immaterial elements. But in fact, what is pilgrimage? There are many definitions and reflections about it, and most of them referring that the act of going on a pilgrimage is behind self-control. Already today, along the years, we have been speaking about that. Sometimes there is an impulse that makes us going on a pilgrimage. So sometimes we cannot explain it, it's just a deep impulse. And for anyone looking for God, the idea of going to where he has manifested himself seems quite natural. So if it seems quite natural, it's something that is in our nature to go, to look for. So sometimes we don't need very deep explanations, we just need to accept it as it is. So, many of people writing about the pilgrimages, and also today here it was already stressed, they speak that the pilgrims walk physically and morally. And the journey and the break off with the daily life is very important because we are apart from our daily life. And that is very important in the pilgrimage. Also, many authors state that the way of Santiago, it doesn't have to be only the way of Santiago, but in fact, many authors have been writing about the way of Santiago. It's believed to be a transformative journey. This morning, we already spoke a lot about that transformative journey. because the Camino allows individuals to accept the natural rhythm and limitations of the body. And that probably is a very interesting and a very important thing. Nowadays, we are not respecting the rhythm of the body. We are not respecting the limitations of our mind and of our body. We are always speeding up for something. And the Camino, any kind of pilgrimage on foot, obliges us to go back to our natural rhythm. Due to that reason, you find on the way, like the one on the right-hand side, many monuments depicting the tired pilgrim. Because to be tired is probably, as you can see here on the left-hand side, what brings you conscience of your own rhythm of life. Okay? That is a statue, but here is the reality. And everybody who went already on a pilgrimage on foot already felt that way, I'm sure. But many specialists say, and also today we already pointed out those subjects, although we need that physical and spiritual, psychic, spiritual hygiene, we also need some tourism practices. So it's not only spiritual or religious practices, and it makes part of the Camino to meet new people. It makes part to have other experiences like having gastronomic experiences. And it depends very much on the way of the pilgrim, and then I will go back to that theme. About pilgrimage, so I don't know so much about other religions. I'm more concerned about the Abrahamic religions. And in the three Abrahamic religions, in Judaism, Christianity, Islamism, there is the word pilgrimage. And in fact, they are pilgrims in all three religions, although the meaning is probably a little bit different. In Judaism, pilgrimages are not sustained practice, although they are still remembered in the religious lectures on the days when they were used to take place. That is normal because of the diaspora. The Jews were all over the country. They could not go easily in the 12th, in the 14th century to the holy places. So it's normal that they reminded the pilgrimages during those special days. Nowadays, many people live already, many Jews in this case, live in Israel, and also with the modern means of transport, mainly the airplane, it's very easy to go back to those traditions. So in fact, in Judaism, we are watching that people are going back to the real tradition of going on a pilgrimage. One of the best well-known is the Shavuot festival, and here you can have an image of it. In Islam, the pilgrimage to Mecca, the fifth pillar of Islamism, has such a strong prevalent position that all other pilgrimages, even important ones, are shaded by the first. So, no doubt this is the pilgrimage in Islam, although there are other important ones. And unlike Christianity, pilgrimage, mainly the one to Mecca, has always been an act of faith which even attributes notoriety to those who go to Mecca. That is very important. For the Islam, going to Mecca even brings notoriety to people. And that helps a lot, that sense of going on a pilgrimage. In Christianity, mainly in Catholicism, the pilgrim's credibility has witnessed different social, political attitudes over the centuries. To better understand the changeable attitudes towards religion, one must be acquainted with history and to watch attentively society's developments. So what I'm going to present now is a very brief history of the Catholic pilgrimage as an example. What has happened with pilgrimages in Catholicism can also happen in other religions, because it depends on many social attitudes. To start with, you can see here in the Middle Ages, I'm speaking about Catholicism, Christianity, pilgrims achieved their best status. Even international laws were created to defend the pilgrims. They didn't have to pay tolls. They were defended against the dangers, so there was a status. So the pilgrims were linked with the status. They were seen as very special people. But this thing didn't last forever. Probably in the Middle Age, pilgrims would think that it would last forever. As today, we think that the way we look at pilgrimages will last forever. And I'm trying during this presentation to show you that probably they are hidden dangers that we must look for. So everything seemed quite normal. It was very popular to go on pilgrimage, but in fact, many of those pilgrims, most of them for sure, went with religious purposes, but many of them, at the time, there wasn't tourism. And that is normal for the human beings. People always enjoyed life. So it was, let's say, a way of enjoying life, giving the excuse that they were going on pilgrimage and they were behaving as if tourists. So they were, let's say, as I wrote in here, they displayed greater curiosity than devotion and contributed towards the notoriety of false pilgrim. So up this time, there were already many people against the pilgrimage because it was not done under faith, let's say. So, for instances, I'm jumping some centuries, of course, and I'm speaking more about, if I speak about the Protestant countries, no pilgrimage was accepted. Lots of shrines were destroyed, and we are speaking about Christianity. And with the thinkers of the 17th and of the 18th century, with the encyclopedia, so the pilgrimage was seen as an outdated voyage of devotion. So it was not well seen anymore. At the beginning of the 19th century, with the French Revolution, and the ideas of the French Revolution spread all over Europe, so pilgrimage was moribund. It was practically dead. It didn't exist. So how it developed from the 19th century until today, because now today we are speaking about pilgrimage as something successful, something happened. It was during the Romanticism, mainly in Germany, and probably the one who contributed most for it, it was Chateaubriand. He wrote The Genius of Christianity. He is a thinker of the 19th century, and he wrote something very interesting, saying that pilgrimages were more effective against unhappiness than all the theories of dry-hearted thinkers, okay? The thinkers from the encyclopedia, they were genius, but that didn't work out with the unhappiness of people. for losing unhappiness, to have happy moments, it will be, for him, much more practical and much more effective to go on a pilgrimage. So we are again in a period pro-pilgrimage. But we never know when things changed. So during the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, people were already going on organized groups. After the World War II, as you can see, they were already the tourism agencies taking care of the logistics of pilgrimage. Booking the flights, the hotels, the restaurants, and so on and so forth. But they have always to do it having in mind what the clergy responsible wants. And many times, and as you can see here on the right-hand side, that pilgrimage is planned by a tourist agent, but under the responsibility of that priest. So that is something very common nowadays. But why people do go in pilgrimage? We already pointed out many of those issues here during the day. And in fact, many academicians wrote about that. And probably we go for different reasons. And there are some specialists who write about this, and they shared it, or they divided it, better saying, in 5 dimensions. And probably each one of you is going to find himself more in one dimension than in the other dimension. So it is not important which is the most important dimension. We all feel those 5 dimensions, but with a different weight, with a different value. So they speak a lot about the cognitive orientation. This includes beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions linked to the nature and the meaning of spirituality. For us, for some of us, to find the meaning of the spirituality, it's very important. And when we go on a pilgrimage, we always think in one of these 5 dimensions. For others, probably more important from the 5 dimensions is the experiential, phenomenological dimension of spirituality. This one is related to the meaning and true value of life. Many of us, when they go on a pilgrimage, we think about the true value of life. For others, it's more important the existential well-being, a way that individuals view the meaning and the purpose of their own individual existence. What I'm doing here, what is my life? And that probably is one that we have been pointing out a lot for the pilgrimages on foot. Another one is the paranormal. So the paranormal, standing for belief in supernatural phenomena. This morning, the Archbishop spoke about the sister Faustina, and that was paranormal. So that is behind the normal, and that is normal. All the people who attend the visions of Mary, for instance, are a little bit in this, because that is not normal for the most of us. And something that we speak also a lot during our conferences is the religiousness, the practice, the habits of each, and the behavior of each religion. So those are the 5 dimensions, and as I was telling you, each one of us feels that one is more important than the other 4, and probably if I will do here a small survey, each one of you are going to point out different of those dimensions. Material elements, so I spoke to you about the material, the pilgrimage, the material elements. That is also very important because they are impacts with the pilgrimage. Here, for instance, you have advertised a hotel in Mecca. Look at the size of it. It will be the largest hotel in the world, consisting of a ring of 12 towers, 45 stories high, with 10,000 bedrooms, 70 restaurants, and 5 rooftop helipads. That is almost like a small city. We are only speaking about a complex. We are not speaking about the religious center of Mecca. We are just speaking about a complex. If you see, for instance, Fatima, in 1917, when Our Lady appeared, here didn't exist a single house, not even one building, not even one building. After 100 years, we have a town with 13,000 inhabitants, 10,000 hotel beds for pilgrims and visitors. If we speak about France, France is always in the top 3 world destinations, either in first, second, or third place. So we are speaking a very big tourism destination. Only Paris has more rooms than the small mountain of Lourdes. So it is the second town, the second city in this case, in France. The first is Paris, and the second is Lourdes with 350 hotels, 40,000 hotel beds that provide accommodation for about 6 million between pilgrims and visitors annually. Look at the numbers in Mecca. So, according to the Mecca Chamber of Commerce and Industries Tourism and Hotels Committee, today they are about 2,000 hotels, 2,000 hotels in Mecca and Medina, almost 385,000 hotel rooms, and almost 1.5 million beds. So those are all territorial impacts that we have also to pay attention. Apart from hotels, you have also all other kind of businesses, like the souvenir shops. Those are not shops for the local people. Those are shops for the people who go to those religious places, who need or who want to buy a souvenir. You have here one in Portugal, you have another one in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, and all that is very important for those sanctuary towns. But nowadays, and some of you already spoke also today about that issue, it's not only the big religious centers which have to be considered, which are important. The pilgrimage routes, for instance, have been a lot studied because they can help the local development. And sometimes for very small towns, it is very important. For instance, here on the Santiago Way, the primary school, it was out of its functions because in this small town, they didn't exist children anymore. And so the school was closed. But as they are pilgrims passing through, they turned the small primary school into a pilgrim's hostel. So I was giving examples of Lourdes, Mecca, and so, but those are also very important. The passage of pilgrims, mainly in depopulated areas, can have a very high significance, even for small businesses. Look at this. We are speaking, some of you probably recognize this yellow van. This is the post or the mail in Spain. So the post or the mail in Spain, of course, the postman is delivering letters as all over. But as an extra income source, they are also using the same van to carry the backpacks of the pilgrims. So there are always small ideas that can help the economy of these depopulated places. So I've been speaking about pilgrimage, immaterial elements, material elements. My half an hour is almost over. And as I told you at the beginning, I'm bringing here some points that can bring us to discussion or at least to reflect about. Those are the three religions, and one or two questions for each of these points. So, history shows, as I spoke about, that even when there are many antagonists towards pilgrimages, they are always believers who keep the tradition. Even you spoke here about the Soviet Union, a disgrace. Everything was almost erased. But in fact, some seeds stayed. And nowadays we have again pilgrimages here in Lithuania and in other countries which were controlled by the Soviet Union. As I was telling you at the beginning, there is a deep impulse in pilgrimage that instigates people to move in space and time. Also, recent studies observe that the mental health effects by being in contact with nature, allowing strong introspective moments, can lead to emotional healing for both religious and non-religious faithful. What do these studies say? That people going on regular holidays, they have a reduction of stress and depression. But if you go on a pilgrimage, that reduction, the level of reduction of stress and depression is much higher. There is much more reduction of stress and of depression if you go on a pilgrimage. Those are studies. I'm not saying that. Those are studies. Then if you go in normal holidays. About the material elements. So, mainly for the big sanctuary towns, numbers of pilgrims are impressive, like Mecca, Lourdes, Fatima, and so on. But the dangers might be hidden back the figures. Sanctuary towns, depending exclusively from pilgrims, is a mistake. In my opinion, is a mistake. Without the presence of pilgrims, those sanctuary towns collapse because they cannot survive. Everything is prepared, is managed for the presence of pilgrims. Due to that reason, in my opinion, it urges to start having other income sources. I'm bringing here a good example. Santiago de Compostela. Of course, this city, without the presence of the pilgrims, would suffer a lot, but it will not disappear, because along the centuries, the industry, the services, and the university were developed. So it will not disappear as a sanctuary town. Fatima, Lourdes, I don't know about Mecca because I don't have that much information, but Lourdes and Fatima for sure will disappear because they depend too much on pilgrims. And last but not the least, what about pilgrimage? Are they going to exist as we know them nowadays? That is what we use to think, so that things always stay the same. But in fact, there are lots of changes, as I showed you with the Catholic pilgrimages. And only speaking about some of the dangers for the future of the pilgrimages. So we lived, and we are still living, the pandemic, COVID-19. Many of you already spoke about it. And many specialists say, and today somebody already referred that we are going to have other pandemics. So we must have strategies, mainly in these very big sanctuary towns, because otherwise they would disappear, because during pandemics, people don't travel. The wars. We had already the experience in the World War II. So during the wars, people don't feel safe, and most of the times is not allowed to cross borders. So there are no international pilgrimages. Who is going to go on international pilgrimage nowadays to Ukraine? Probably, I'm not going to say nobody, but probably very few people. So 1 or 2 years ago, for us it was unbelievable to think that we would have again a war in Europe. And it was only 1 or 2 days ago. Things can change very fast. And this is a symbol of dictatorship. I brought Hitler, I could have brought Stalin, I could have brought even today, nowadays, dictators. So that, as you could see, when I was speaking about the history, the rulers sometimes impose conditions that people cannot go on pilgrimages. You spoke so much this morning about the Soviet Union, here in Lithuania, no pilgrimages, and so on and so forth. And only looking at the last elections all over Europe, even in the democratic countries, people are not safe. Because people want to impose their ideas, want to end the free thinking, they are raising the results. We are not paying enough attention. And I'm not going to speak about politics because my main concern is about the pilgrimages. So there are lots of things which can affect the pilgrimages, and that it was my goal coming here and leaving these challenges for discussion or to think about. Thank you very much for your attention.
We go our 5 minutes for questions. Any questions? People are dying for a coffee.
Wonderful talk. Since you're speaking very broadly, let me push you to even think beyond religion. Do you think in terms of international devotional travel, we can think of pilgrimage like that, what do you think of people who travel on themes of, say, sports or pop culture to visit the sites associated with those things?
I'm not sure if I really understood your question, but you are referring people going to the pop, to the musical shows? No, the festivals? Can you repeat?
Let me just restate that people, a lot, especially young people, have great devotion to their popular culture,
yes,
popular music, sports, and some do travel to visit destinations associated with those.
Yes, I read it. For instance, they go to Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris to see their idols and so on. But that, I think it's a little bit different, because here we are speaking more about religious towns, sanctuaries. So that one has more to do with a private faith, let's say. And this one, it's more a practice which is managed by the churches. So Islam, for instance, and I'm not going to speak a lot about Islam because I'm not a specialist, but probably I could not have brought those problems that we observed in Catholicism, because they were always united, the spiritual leaders about saying, and the political forces about defending the pilgrimage. So at least I don't know any big crisis for the Islam. For instance, for the Jews, they could not practice because they were spread all over the world. But here, mainly in Europe, you can see that it is very changeable. If the ones ruling, the kings, the presidents and so on, the thinkers, the ones who influence the other people's ideas and minds defend the pilgrimages, so okay, good, there are lots of people going. If they are persecuted, of course, those movements stop. So with the French Revolution, most of people at the time thought the pilgrimage is over, and suddenly with Chateaubriand and other thinkers in Germany, suddenly it reappeared. But in a moment, the Soviets came in here, no pilgrimages. After 50 years, okay, let's go again. So we must be attentive, because most of these religious towns, like Fatima or Lourdes, would not survive for a period of 50 years. And most people living in those towns, they depend on the pilgrims movements. Otherwise, they get out of job. They go out of job, that's for sure.
I can take one more question, and then we'll go for, okay, we got two. Gion, and then Pascal.
But isn't even this going to sports event or going to Elvis Presley's house or going to Shakespeare's house, isn't it still pilgrimage?
Yes, there are many authors. There are many authors who defend that there is a pilgrimage in all, that each tourist going to a place, to Notre Dame, is doing his own pilgrimage. But that is already, let's say, in my opinion, a different subject. It's to see a tourism movement as a pilgrimage, you see? But that it is not the point that I wanted to point out in here, but we could discuss in another occasion what is tourism. It is so far, or is probably closer than we think, to pilgrimage. Of course, if we ever go to visit the KGB Center, I will go there on a pilgrimage as well.
Pascal? Just take Pascal, because we'll take for...
Just say that Darius has written about this,
Okay.
about your journeys.
Just take a Pascal question, then we'll go to Darius, please, yeah?
Question before, I don't remember, 16, 18 years ago, a German comedian walked to St. James. After this, you had a high influx of non-religious people walking to St. James because of the experiences they read from the comedian. And a few years later, you had this American movie, I don't remember who started it, and the numbers were going really up. When you talk to people, they were saying, I don't want to go to St. James anymore because it becomes too touristic. So they start going to other places.
But
what kind of challenges do you see?
Pascal, due to that reason, while I was preparing this presentation, I thought, should I bring or not the 5 spiritual dimensions that most of you already read? And I thought, yes, probably I'm going to bring, mainly because of the Camino de Santiago, many people go for religious purposes, and others, as we say, go for spiritual purposes. But the spiritual purposes, being for religious motives or not, are in there. They go because people want to know more about the sense of life. They want to know more about themselves. So for us, it's very easy to divide people into categories. Those are religious, those are spiritual, those are non-faithful. But there is not 100% of religious, there is not 100% of spiritual. Everything is a little mix, and it's up to you to feel the way you want. So if you go on the Santiago way, for instance, it's for any reason. For me, it doesn't matter. I prefer to study the impacts of pilgrims going to Santiago in the small towns with the rebuilding of that primary school and so on, than to know the reason why people go there.
Point from Darius, then what we're going to do, close it 1/2 and we discuss this our coffee break.
Yeah, it's just want to interrupt the discussion because about this secular pilgrimages, and I'm sociologist, and from the point of view of sociology, we could say that religious pilgrimages and secular pilgrimages are equal in if you want during the journey to manifest your values and identity. So I did some researches, and if we take ritualistic dimensions, so it seems that some sport fandom journeys to go to support a team, for example, it's very similar to group pilgrimages to Fatima, for example. And a lot of rituals, a lot of different dimensions which are equal to religious pilgrimages. So it's a broader category, is manifestation of values and identity. And so it's, in sociology it's quite simple answer for this. Yeah, and another dimension was...
Small point from Kevin, because we don't want no speeches.
I'm just saying they've both seen Psalms, which is great.
Yeah.
Just to read it, totally anecdotal. I have a former work colleague who decided to walk the Camino after the end of a 2-year project to give himself just some headspace. Absolutely no interest in religion, and came back completely religious about it. So, you know, I think that's another really, really fascinating thing. He went with, you can't believe how little he was interested. And he came back preaching to people about faith and how he'd been reborn. And
Stefan was doing that a little bit this morning.
Okay, I'm going to
So you
close
don't
this session.
speak, don't have to speak about your friends.
Thank
and
you very much.
Stefan
Give
is
him a round of
there.
applause.
Thank you. Good.
Sana Silvia, que ela manda dos parabéns.
Adeus, Silvia.
You can take your... So how long will we take you for break?
15 minutes, yeah?
15 minutes for break, please. Thank you.